I stood in the doorway of my brand new house while my parents walked room to room like inspectors. My mother counted bedrooms out loud. My father frowned, already annoyed. Then my brother laughed and said the kids could take the bigger room. That's when my mom snapped and shouted, "So where do we all sleep?" The room went silent. My chest felt hollow, not shocked, just tired. This wasn't confusion, it was entitlement. And as I looked at the empty hallway, I realized the answer they expected was exactly the one I was no longer willing to give after years of paying for their comfort alone. Before I go any further, tap like and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. And if you've ever been treated like you owed someone a place in your own life, share your story. It reminds me I'm not the only one. My name is Alexis Harper. I'm 30 and I make my living as a creative designer. I spend most of my days staring at screens, tweaking colors and spacing until things finally feel balanced. Funny thing is, I was always good at creating balance for everyone else, just never for myself. On the outside, my family looked ordinary. Weekend dinners, holiday photos, smiles that lasted just long enough for social media. If you passed us in a grocery store, you'd never guess anything was wrong. But inside our family, there was an unspoken rule that everyone seemed to understand except me. I was the reliable one, the fixer, the safety net. My parents never said it outright. They didn't have to. It was always framed as concern. My dad talked constantly about his heart, how stress could trigger something serious. My mom spoke softly, like every sentence was heavy with worry. "We just don't know how much time your father has," she'd say, her voice dropping low. And every time she said it, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. Fear has a way of making decisions for you. Then there was my brother Lucas, younger, louder, always in the middle of some new plan that never quite worked out. He had a family of his own kids who seemed to grow faster every year, and problems that somehow always landed on my parents' shoulders, and by extension, on mine. Lucas didn't ask me for help directly. He never had to. My parents translated for him. They always did. Money was the background noise of our relationship. Payments here, bills there. Nothing dramatic on its own, just enough often enough that it became routine. I learned to budget around it, learned which groceries to skip, learned how to stretch a paycheck quietly so no one would worry. They rarely thanked me. Gratitude would have made it feel optional, and it never was. When I mentioned I was thinking about buying a house, the reaction was immediate. Not excitement, not pride, relief. My mom started talking about the future in that vague way she used when she was about to ask for something. My dad asked questions about space, parking, schools nearby. Lucas joked about how nice it would be for the kids to have a yard. No one asked what I wanted. They talked in plurals. "We'll need room. The kids can't be cramped. Families should stay together." Every sentence carried an assumption that my first home wouldn't really be mine, that it would be an extension of everything I'd already been providing. I remember sitting alone that night in my apartment lights-off laptop glowing in the dark. Listings open, houses I could afford, houses that made sense. And for the first time, a thought surfaced that scared me more than disappointing them. What if I didn't build my life around their needs this time? The closer I got to buying a house, the louder my phone became. It started with casual check-ins, my mom asking how the search was going, my dad reminding me to take my time, but not too much time. Lucas sending links to neighborhoods he liked always, with comments about school zones and backyard space. None of it sounded aggressive on the surface. That was the problem. It was all wrapped in concern, like a gift you didn't realize had strings until it tightened around your wrists. One night, my parents invited me over for dinner. Nothing fancy, store-bought dessert, the kind of evening that pretends to be relaxed. We sat around the table, plates half-full, conversation drifting, until my mom cleared her throat. That was her tell. She folded her napkin slowly, then said, "We've been thinking about how important it is for the family to stay together." I already knew where this was going. I just didn't know how far they planned to push it. My dad leaned back and nodded. He asked what kind of houses I was looking at, how many bedrooms, whether I'd thought about how fast the kids were growing. Lucas didn't say much. He didn't need to. He just smiled and scrolled on his phone like the outcome was already decided. I tried to keep my voice steady. I said I was looking at places that fit my budget, places that made sense for one person. That word seemed to irritate them. One person. My mom frowned and said, "Family doesn't think that way." Lucas finally looked up and laughed. "You won't even notice us," he said. "We're used to squeezing in." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about help. It wasn't even about need. It was about ownership. They spoke as if my future address was already theirs, as if my name on the paperwork was just a formality. The conversation escalated without anyone raising their voice. My mom started listing reasons, emergencies, childcare. My dad mentioned his health again, how stress could be dangerous if he had to move later. Lucas said rent was crazy these days, like that settled everything. No one asked if I was okay with it. They were negotiating a life I hadn't agreed to live. I left early that night. In my car, I sat with the engine running, hands on the steering wheel, heart pounding. I felt small, not because they were louder than me, but because they were so certain. They believed I would cave. History was on their side. Over the next few weeks, the pressure became constant. Texts asking for updates, suggestions disguised as jokes. My mom sent listings that were way above what I'd mentioned. Lucas asked if the kids could pick their rooms. I stopped answering right away. The silence bothered them more than any argument would have. Then came the moment I stopped pretending this was still a conversation. My mom sent a message that said, "Just make sure it's big enough for everyone. We're counting on you. Counting on you. Not asking. Counting." I stared at the screen for a long time, and for the first time, instead of feeling guilty, I felt something colder and clearer. If I followed their plan, I wouldn't just be buying a house. I'd be locking myself into the same role forever. That night, I opened a new search filter and unchecked one box: minimum bedrooms. 2 was enough. Once I made the decision, everything got quiet. Not peaceful. Just still, like the moment after a door slams and you're waiting to see what breaks. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped responding to every message. The house search became something I did alone early in the mornings before work or late at night when the city outside my apartment had gone dark. That's when I found it. A small 2-bedroom bungalow tucked into a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy, no grand entrance. Just clean lines, big windows, and a patch of sunlight that spilled across the living room floor like it belonged there. It felt manageable, honest, like a life that didn't require constant negotiation. I didn't tell my parents, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I knew they would try to rewrite the choice before it was even mine. I met with a lender. I read every page. I asked questions I'd never asked before about ownership liability boundaries, words that had never existed in my family vocabulary. Signing the papers was strangely emotional, not dramatic, just heavy. I sat there with the pen in my hand, thinking about all the times I'd signed off on things for everyone else without a second thought. Payments, bills, promises I didn't realize were permanent. This time my name meant something different. This time it meant control. When the sale closed, I walked through the house alone. I opened the windows. I stood in each room and imagined nothing. No plans for guests, no mental math about who would sleep where, just space. 2 bedrooms, 1 for me, one that could be anything or nothing at all. The pushback started the moment my mom found out. She didn't ask how I felt. She asked how many rooms. When I told her there was a pause on the line, the kind where you can hear someone recalculating. 2. She repeated like I'd misspoken. That's small. My dad followed up with a call of his own. He said he was worried about emergencies, about the kids, about how cramped it would be for everyone. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said I understood his concerns. Then I didn't add anything else. The silence unnerved him. Lucas was less subtle. He sent a message that read, "So where are we supposed to fit?" There was no greeting, no question mark at the end, just assumption. That night, I sat at the kitchen counter of my new place eating takeout from the container, the house still echoing around me. For the first time, the guilt didn't hit right away. Instead, I felt something else, a shift, like I'd stepped out of a line I'd been standing in my whole life. I wasn't cutting anyone off. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't making threats. I was doing something far more dangerous to them. I was choosing myself quietly. And I knew they weren't going to accept that without a fight. They didn't ask to see the house, they announced it. My mom texted me early that morning, something cheerful and fake about making it a family moment. My dad followed up with a reminder that Lucas and the kids would be coming too, as if that detail was non-negotiable. Lucas sent a thumbs-up emoji. No questions, no permission, just confirmation. I said yes anyway. Not because I wanted them there, but because I knew this was the moment everything would either collapse quietly or explode out in the open. I wasn't running anymore. I arrived early, unlocked the door, and let the house fill with air. The windows were wide open, light spilled across the hardwood floor. The place smelled like fresh coffee and faint paint, clean and undecided. No photos on the walls yet, no clutter, just space that hadn't learned how to belong to anyone else. Their cars lined up along the curb like they owned the street. My mom stepped inside first, purse tucked under her arm, eyes already scanning. She didn't say hi. She didn't hug me. She did what she always did, she evaluated. My dad followed slower, his mouth set in a familiar line of disappointment he'd perfected over the years. Lucas came last with the kids, loud and casual, like this was a vacation rental he'd already paid for. Wow, my mom said finally. It's cozy, that word. Cozy, the polite version of small. She walked straight past me and into the hallway, opening doors without asking. Bedroom, bathroom, second bedroom. She stopped there, counting silently, once, twice. Then she turned back toward me. That's all she asked. That's all I said. The room shifted, not loud yet, just tense. My dad cleared his throat. Alexis, you didn't mention it was this limited. I didn't hide anything, I replied. You never asked. Lucas laughed, shaking his head. Okay, but where's the rest of it? The bigger rooms, there aren't any. My mom pressed her lips together. She walked the house again slower this time, opening cabinets, checking the backyard, standing in the doorway like she was waiting for something to reveal itself. Lucas whispered to his kids to stay near him. No one spoke to me directly. Finally, my mom stopped in the living room and turned around, her voice sharp. Now no effort left to soften it. So where do we sleep? She demanded. The question echoed, not just because of the empty walls, but because of how certain she was that it was valid, that this was something I owed them an answer to. Lucas crossed his arms. My dad shook his head like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. I felt tired, deeply tired. Not angry, not scared, just done. You don't, I said. Silence crashed down hard. Lucas blinked. What? You don't sleep here, I repeated. This house isn't for that. My mom laughed, once sharp and humorless. Don't be dramatic. I'm not, I said. I'm being clear. My dad stepped forward. So you expect us to just... What, visit and leave? Yes. That's heartless, my mom snapped. After everything we sacrificed for you. I nodded slowly. You mean everything I paid for? Her eyes flashed. That's not fair. No, I said. It's accurate. They all started talking at once then. My dad brought up his health the way he always did when he felt cornered. Lucas talked about how hard things were for his family, how expensive everything had gotten. My mom listed moments from my childhood like they were receipts I owed interest on. I let them finish. Then I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up the folder I'd left there. What's that? Lucas asked, already annoyed. Records, I said, opening it. Payments, bills, support, everything I've covered over the years. My mom scoffed. So what, we're family? Family doesn't demand, I said calmly. Family doesn't assume ownership. Lucas leaned closer. You're really going to turn this into a legal thing I already did, I replied, quietly, to understand where I stand. My dad's face darkened. You talked to a lawyer? Yes. For what, my mom snapped. To sue your own parents, to protect myself, I said. And to stop this. I slid the folder across the counter. No theatrics, just paper meeting wood. This house, I continued, is in my name, fully, legally. There's no obligation for me to house anyone else. No requirement to make room, no expectation beyond what I choose. Lucas laughed, but it sounded thin. You think paperwork changes who we are? No, I said. I think it shows who you've been. My mom's voice dropped. You're choosing a building over your family. I met her gaze. I'm choosing boundaries over being used. The kids were quiet now. One of them tugged at Lucas's sleeve and asked when they were going home. The word home landed heavy in my chest. This place. This quiet, empty space. It was the first thing that had ever truly been mine. "You can't just shut us out," Lucas said, his voice sharper now. "We're your family." "I'm not shutting you out," I said. "I'm stopping you from moving in." My dad looked genuinely shaken. "You're tearing us apart." "No," I replied. "I'm stepping out of something that was never fair." My mom looked around the room again, slower this time. The windows, the corners, the absence of extra beds. Her expression shifted from anger to calculation. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "I know," I answered. "But this part is." I walked them to the door. No shouting, no dramatic exit, just the sound of footsteps and the door closing behind them. The click of the lock echoed louder than anything they'd said. I stood there for a long moment, my heart racing, hands trembling. Then I laughed softly, not out of joy, but relief. They had come expecting space, expecting control. They left with nothing. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It came in quiet ripples. My mom stopped calling. When she did text, the messages were short and careful, like she was afraid of crossing an invisible line. My dad sent one voicemail about his health, then nothing. Lucas tried once more, a long message about how disappointed he was, how families should stick together. I read it without responding and deleted it. For the first time, their words didn't pull me back in. They didn't show up at the house again. I heard things through relatives, how uncomfortable gatherings had become, how my parents complained without naming me, circling the truth like it might bite, how Lucas had to figure things out on his own for once. I didn't feel victorious listening to it. I just felt distant, like I was watching a story that no longer belonged to me. Life in the bungalow settled into a rhythm. Morning light in the kitchen. Quiet evenings without tension humming under my skin. I bought a small table and ate meals without rushing. I slept better. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes, bracing for another demand. The biggest change wasn't my family. It was me. I realized how much space fear had taken up in my life. Fear of being seen as selfish, fear of being alone, fear that love had conditions I had to keep paying for. Letting go of that didn't make me colder. It made me calmer. Sometimes I'd stand in the doorway at night, looking down the hall at the 2 closed bedroom doors and smile. Not because I'd won something, but because for the first time what I had was enough, and no one could take it from me. If this story stirred something in you, let me say this plainly. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. Love that only exists when you give everything you have isn't love, it's a transaction. Walking away from that isn't failure, it's survival. If you've ever felt like your needs came last in your own family, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're listening from. Your voice matters more than you think, and if you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe and stay with me.